Hi, this is Bill Prater, and welcome to Business Builder Show, where we feature business owners from all over the planet who've got a special expertise, not only in their own space, but in growing their business. So we're bringing you timely, provocative, and actionable resources to inspire, promote, and accelerate your quest for business excellence. Today, we're going to talk about the power of the handwritten note with David Wachs. Now, David's latest venture is called Handwrytten. It's bringing back the lost art of letter writing through scalable, robot-based solutions that write your notes in pen. It developed as a platform. Handwrytten lets you send notes from your CRM, such as Salesforce, the website, apps, through custom integrations of a variety of sources. David's also a frequent speaker on messaging technology and has presented for the Direct Marketing Association, South by Southwest, Advertising Resource Foundation, and the National Restaurant Association, among others. He currently writes for Inc. magazine with his column called Stepping Away from the Day-to-Day. David, my friend, it's great to have you here, sir.
Thank you so much for having me, Bill. It's a real honor.
So I know you've got a very unique business. So tell us, who do you serve?
We serve everybody that wants to send a handwritten note and really stand out. But in reality, that means these days we serve a lot of realtors that come through our door or through our website. We also serve insurance brokers, piano tuners, solar panel installers, luxury brands. The list goes on, but we really do try to focus on businesses. So any business looking to reach out and attract more customers or retain customers, that's really our customer these days.
That's beautiful. So they share a problem, undoubtedly. So can you give us a kind of a capsulization, David, of the problem that you and your company are able to solve for these folks?
The problem is that everybody has gotten lazy and everybody has turned to electronic communication, whether that's emails, and the average person gets about 140 emails a day. The average office worker spends 24% of their time just managing their email inbox. So they send emails, they send Twitter, they send Facebook, they send Slack, they send text messages, which I can talk about because that's where I came from. But they spend all their time on the electronic communication realm, none of the time picking up the phone, because I think these days everybody's afraid to, and none of the time sending actual handwritten notes. Handwritten notes are so few and far between. If you can stand out from the pack using our platform, or just sitting down and writing handwritten notes, I guarantee you, we as a company guarantee you'll get results or your money back. So, everybody's moved digital, so we pivoted analog, but we use technology to help you do it where you're not going to have to sit in front of a desk and hold a pen and get a hand cramp and run out of paper. We do it all for you.
So I'd like you to explain how you actually solve this problem you've identified. And what I'm thinking, David, is maybe you could think of a case study.
Sure.
One of your clients. Take us through. They showed up. They had the following problem. This is what we did. This is how we do it. This is the result they got. Sort of a story.
So let me give you two examples. I'm going to give you a smaller and a bigger. So the smaller is a piano tuner. The piano tuner is located in Pennsylvania. He goes into your house once a year, tunes your piano. Your piano doesn't need to be tuned more than once a year. So he doesn't see you for another year, but he wants to send a handwritten note to you to thank you for the opportunity to come into your home, to sit at your most prized possession and work on it for you, right? So what he did was he tied us into his pipe drive, which is his CRM system. Now, he could have just typed those notes out in our platform directly, but he tied us into pipe drive to ensure that everybody that has their piano tuned receives a handwritten note from us. The way we send those notes or write those notes, I can get into because that's kind of fun. But in the end, what happens is he goes, tunes your piano. He knows 4, 5, 6 days later, whenever the USPS gets to it, a handwritten note with his name and his brand is going to appear at your doorstep. A year later, Bill, a year later, when he shows up at your house and he tunes your piano again, often that handwritten note is standing up on the piano. So not only was it opened, not only was it read, it was put on display in the most prized room. As a kid, my mom would call it the fancy room of the house. You can't buy that real estate. You can't pay for a billboard to be sitting on the piano reminding you to reach out in a year when you need the piano tuned again. But handwritten notes hold such a special part in our heart that when you receive one, it holds, great esteem, and you're going to act on it, read it, treasure it more than you'll never do that with a text message. You'll never do that with an email. Another example, we work with a large snack box company. So what this snack box does is we actually have them here in our office. Every 2 weeks, they send our office a box of snacks, granola bars, beef jerky, all sorts of weird seaweed snacks and the rest. But anyway, we get that box every 2 weeks. When they started using us as a service, when they started using us as a service, they started sending us to people that they had screwed up on, whether they hadn't delivered the box at the appropriate time, had delivered the wrong box, whatever it might be. That person had an issue with the service, and they wanted to send a handwritten note follow-up, apologizing and providing a new box of service, for the service, saying, we're so sorry for the screw up. Here's a new box of snacks. Let's make it up to you. We want your business. What they then noticed was those customers that had the screw up and had received the win-back box and the handwritten note with a genuine apology for the issue actually had a higher lifetime value than the customers that were never screwed up with in the first place. So what do? They screw up with everybody. They tend to win back to everybody and rise all tides, right? So there's a million ways to use our service. People say, well, what's the most common way you help people? We say we send thank you notes. 95% of the notes out our door are thank you. Thank you for the business. Thanks for letting me tune your piano. Thanks for letting me install solar panels, whatever that might be. But we send a lot of thank you notes around here. The rest of them are birthday or appointment reminders, whatever it might be. But the vast majority of what we do around here is just helping people be grateful in an automated way.
I'm curious about the stamp. Is it a stamp, or is it a postage meter type of thing?
Absolutely. So everything about our service, and this is where the nuance comes in, because there's other players in our space that will laser print a note that looks handwritten. We don't do that. What we do is we have actually built our own robot. And Bill, I know you're in Phoenix, so I invite you down to see them. We have 2 patents on it currently and 7 more coming. That robot holds a real pen, a Pilot G2 ballpoint pen. You can pick it up at Staples, and then it writes out your note on the stationery of your choice and the handwriting of your choice. It can sign it with your signature. It can write in your handwriting. We then write out the envelope same way, and we put a real stamp on it. So the whole thing from soup to nuts looks authentic. We just rolled out last week our new handwriting engine, which before we would vary the line spacing so that 2 lines aren't exactly the same. And we vary the left margins so that not everything starts at the exact same spot on the left-hand side of the page. And we randomize the letters so that every letter is a little bit different. But now what we do is we bend each line of text ever so gently, so that, because people don't write on hard lines, and neither should your notes. So it is by far the most authentic looking fake note you could send. And we can even include your business card. We, much like a grocery store, can activate a Starbucks card, an Amazon card, Home Depot, a couple different brands. We can insert those in with your notes. It's a service that I wish existed when I started the company, and that's how I got into it.
That's fantastic. So you touched a bit on how you're different from your competition.
Yeah.
And so when you described it, I clearly understood, because I've seen what you've said. Yes, sure, it looks like a script, but it looks like a computer produced it.
Right.
Basically it's a font. Right. And I did get a chance to look at the website and see the pictures of the machines, and I will come by, take you up on going into the plant and taking a look at things. So what sort of price points? Can you give us an idea of, can I send a note to somebody for $10 or something, or what sort of price points do I have?
You can absolutely do it for $10. I mean, most people would just pay $3, but if you want to pay me $10, I'd be happy.
Oh, excellent. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, no, it's starting price with no discount is $3.25 plus a stamp. A stamp now is 58 cents, so it comes out, or what is it? $3.25 plus 58, yeah. So it comes out to $3.83. But if you do an international, you have to pay the international postage, stuff like that. There's multiple ways to get a discount off that $3.25. You can sign up for a subscription where you're buying a bunch at once, or buying a certain amount over time. You can prepay for a bunch, or you can just go on our website and upload a bunch at once. So we don't have to load one of your bill thank you cards into the machine. We can load 50 of them, and you get the economies of scale there. So there's several ways to save on that. Our largest clients pay in the $2 range, but for the average Tom, Dick, or Harry, it's $3.25. Now, if you want that card to be customized with your logo at the top and your photo on the back or whatever, there's an additional fee for that, because we have to put that card through additional processes. But then it's only $3.75 plus postage, so it's still very affordable.
Yeah, it surely is. It certainly is for a very, very high impact gesture.
Right.
Even just the gesture itself, regardless of how it gets delivered, is really spectacular. You and I talked earlier about 3D mail and that type of thing.
Yes, exactly.
So I think I do for sure, and I believe our listeners have a fine idea of how this would help them out. So what I'd like to do now, with your permission, is talk about your business, how you came up with the idea,
Sure.
what some of the key milestones were as you grew it, and particularly what I'd like you to either interweave or I'll interject some of the wins you've had, maybe the patents, for example, and what you learned from that, maybe a couple, 3 failures,
Sure.
mistakes that you had, and what you learned from that. So take us through the history of Handwrytten.
Well, if it's okay with you, I'll go back a little further.
Okay.
Prior to this, I ran a text messaging company. So before text messaging, I was in venture capital and investment banking and so on. And then I moved out to San Diego to work for a venture capitalist. He turned out to be an insane madman, fired me without cause, and I was out on the street. So I thought, shoot, what do I do? My father was a realtor, and he said, why not? And this is before the iPhone. He said, why not use BlackBerries or barcodes to get information on houses? And he was actually ahead of the time, because the QR code didn't exist back then. But I said, well, maybe not BlackBerries, but how about text in for info on houses? So we started that industry. And okay. I quickly pivoted away from real estate, because no offense, I don't like dealing with realtors. And we grew into one of the largest providers of text messaging CRM. I called it mobile CRM out there, doing millions of messages a day for Abercrombie and Fitch, Toys R Us, Sam's Club, Office Max, all these brands. I sold that company in 2012. I then had to work with them for 2 more years during what's called an earnout period, for your listeners that don't know. But when they buy your company, they often want you to stick around. It's not versus just throw the keys and say, see you later, alligator. So I stuck around for 2 years, helped them during that transition process. And then when I was leaving, during that process, I was like, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? And I wanted to send my clients and my employees handwritten notes thanking them for sticking with me through all these years. And I sat down and started writing, got through like 3 of them, and thought, this is impossible. I'm an ADHD kind of guy. I can't get it together to write all these handwritten notes. I did, but it was painful, to say the least. So I thought, gee, there has to be a better way. Voila, the day after I left Cellit, my last company, I started Handwrytten. Initially, I started that with off-the-shelf handwriting machines called auto pens, which, if you have a college diploma, it might be signed by, the dean.
Oh, sure.
That would be signed with an auto pen. It was actually invented by Thomas Jefferson, and then it's gone through a few improvements, but the quality still kind of stunk. And the company behind it was very well intended, but a bunch of hippies that couldn't get their stuff together, and the company stunk. And I've never had this experience where it was a somewhat decent product, but you can't get past the company. The company was just so disorganized that I couldn't make it work. And I'm a software guy. I've never built a robot before, but I thought eventually I'm gonna have to, build a robot. So what happened was we had a very large account, one of these big delivered to your home ingredient mailboxes, and we needed more machines to fill the order. And the company that I was working with wouldn't sell them to me. And I basically lost my top. I said, I'm out, we need our own solution. And prior to that, I had started building, but it really accelerated the process. And we went through a couple of revisions, but came out with our own robot, which was the biggest change. And that was about 4 years, three to 4 years into the company when we came out with our own robot. And having that robot just dramatically changed the business. It allowed us total control. We could build as many of them as we wanted without an outlandish fee. Every time I needed something changed on the robot, I didn't have to go back to the hippies in Virginia. I could do it myself and make it much better. Our robot kept track of pen distance, so it knew when it was going to run out of ink, and it didn't just write a bunch of characters that didn't exist because the pen was out. It could get controlled by the hundreds. The other robot, you could only control 10 at a time using a computer. It was just drastically better. In fact, the founder or the heir to that company contacted me and said, good luck to you. You better not copy what we're doing. And I thought to myself, I didn't say it, but I said, you know what? I wouldn't know how to build a robot that bad. So our robot can do everything that the other one couldn't. And we could build them at a price point internally that made a lot of sense. We then spent every day since then trying to improve it, trying to improve the writing speed, trying to improve the quality, bending the text, all those things. So we truly have the best of breed solution, and that's still ongoing. I mean, it took us, we're 8 years old now. So 4 years ago, we came out with our robot, and we're still working on it 4 years later, still improving it. I just had a meeting with the engineering team before this about what are we doing next. So there's always something to do there, which quite frankly is a lot of fun. And it's neat. We now have 175 robots. We build them in our facility here. They're cut in our facility. We use laser cutters and 3D printers to make them. It's all manufactured here. We build our own circuit boards. We program them. The whole thing, soup to nuts, is vertically integrated as if we're Henry Ford back in the day. So that's been one of the biggest changes. As far as biggest screw ups, things I've learned from, I could give you some stories. My best stories are in my old company, if you're okay with that.
Well, yeah, but I'm sure there's a lesson about that. The company, the previous supplier of robots.
Yeah.
And so there was a lesson out of that. So what did you learn with that? It wasn't exactly a screw up, but it was a startling thing. What was your lesson?
Be careful who you get in bed with and who you depend on. The problem was there aren't too many companies that make these handwriting machines, or there weren't at the time. And there was the company in Virginia, then there was one even more antiquated, I believe out of Germany, but also with a pretty big presence in Virginia. They're all sold to government, so that's why they're based out in Virginia. And I knew it would be a problem, but I also needed something to shoehorn me into the space to get me going. So, back in the back of my head, I always knew I'd have to build a robot. I just didn't know how. And, people have words of advice they live out, they go off. Mine was told to me by Conan O'Brien in college. I had the opportunity to meet him, and he said, always get in over your head. So that's what I tried to do. I figured, okay, I'll just build a robot. I'll get in over my head. And initially, I found a gentleman who worked for Jet Propulsion Lab, literally a rocket scientist. He was in his day job. He was trying to build a robot that would drill into a comet. So NASA was looking to land a robot on a comet, have the little robot drill into the comet and take a core sample back to Earth. He was on the team to do that. The robot I got back from him was a total disaster. I don't know if he was a stoner and had just a minor role at that company, or if just being in a large bureaucratic company, you know, there's no time, there's no, time pressure to do anything. But the thing I got back from him stunk of weed and didn't do a damn thing. Then I found a guy in Phoenix where we're based. And I asked him, his name was Bill also. I asked him to build a robot, and because he was local and I thought I could manage him better. And he said, well, I just took a new job. I'm not available, but I'll introduce you to the best engineering team in Phoenix. And those very kooky people turned out to be the best engineering team in Phoenix. And they helped me get my robot off the ground for a very reasonable fee. And then the last step of that was after they had the first version of the robot ready, they said, okay, now you need to hire somebody and we need to train them how to build it and maintain it and improve it. And so I hired a kid out of Arizona State University, straight out of school. And I said, you know, you won't know this now, but if you take this job, this will be the best job you've ever had in your life. And so he came, and I meant it because I've had jobs. And he came aboard, and had he gone to work at Boeing and be an engineer at Boeing or whatever else, he would have been working on a 747, but he wouldn't have been working on a 747. He would have been working on one door hinge, the lavatory of the 747, and he would have spent 2 years working on it and then handed that over to somebody else who would have approved or disapproved it. Then he'd start all over. At this, he owned the robot from start to finish and had total product ownership of the entire thing. So when he came aboard, he learned how to build them, and they were made out of full metal. And this is another thing that was really interesting. It was fully metal. So on the front of the robot was a big box that held the electronic componentry. That box, it was just a box. That box, and it had a hole cut out for the screen where you could use the touch screen and all that. That box alone cost us $400 for a metal box. And he looked at it and he said, you know, I could probably 3D print a box that would do the same thing. And I said, well, I don't have a 3D printer. I said, how much is a 3D printer? He said, let me go find one that'll work. And he came back, he found one on Amazon. We don't use them anymore. They're not high quality enough for us, but he found one on Amazon for $400. And I said, and how much would it cost to build the box with that robot? How much plastic? He said, let me find out. He went back, came back, about $4. So I said, you mean to tell me that with every robot we build, we will cover the cost of that printer? And he said, absolutely, yes. So I'm like, we're all in. Let's buy that robot. Let's get going, you know, that 3D printer, let's get going. So we bought the 3D printer. We 3D printed that silly box, and then we started replacing more and more parts from anodized CNC aluminum, which cost a lot of money, to the 3D printing, which costs very little. The other part of that is when you go and you have a part that's made out of anodized aluminum that you send off to a CNC shop, you have to make sure that part's perfect. You have to run it through your 3D model. You have to ensure everything is exactly the way you want it, because when you go to make that part, you can't make one. The only way to get cost efficiency is to make 20 or 40 or 60 or whatever. So what I did was, by moving it in-house to 3D print, you could almost make it an art more than a science. You could say, okay, well, that part works. How about shave a little bit off here, cut a little bit off there? And then 20 minutes later, he'd come back to me with a new part, you know, for pennies. So that was very exciting. And then what happened was we 3D printed the whole damn thing. And that wasn't the solution, because some big parts, and if I'm going off topic, let me know.
No, you're right on topic. This is, you know, everybody that's listening to us, I believe I've discovered over the years, if they get one single nugget out of listening to you,
right,
it's gold. So just keep going. You're on a roll.
So what we did was we're like, well, let's make the whole damn thing out of 3D print. And we upgraded from a $400 3D printer to a $15,000 3D printer that was higher quality. And that did work. We could build a whole robot out of 3D. It would just take forever because 3D printing, additive manufacturing is very slow. You have to go line by line, and build up parts. So the time it would take to build one robot was about 2.5 weeks. No, I'm sorry, 1.5 weeks just to print the parts for the robot. So we started playing around and saying, you know, what could we do? Could we injection mold parts? Could we, you know, cut them out of wood? And I said, well, why not laser cut? So instead of 3D printing certain parts, we now laser cut out of acrylic, 1/2-inch acrylic, flat parts that aren't knobby where you need a 3D printer to do. And that brought 1.5 weeks of parts. I'm sorry, the whole machine took 2.5 weeks or something, but the parts we were able to replace took 1.5 weeks. We brought it down to 15 minutes. And the printer, the laser cutter cost $15,000. The 3D printer cost $15,000. Now we have a whole bank of them, but we've brought the entire process in-house. Later, one of the big stumbling blocks was we were hand wiring all these parts together, just wiring. And it would take 3 days, 2 to 3 days just to wire a robot. And then God forbid that robot gets jostled, or if somebody's not paying attention, gets wired wrong, you have to kind of start all over. So we then moved to having our own circuit boards printed. So we've just gone down that path, and it's just been a interesting path of manufacturing for a company that knew nothing about manufacturing. Then on the other side, we were dealing with customer cards. So Bill, you would call us and say, I want to send out thank you cards to all my podcast guests, but I want them to be on my stationery, not on your stationery. We'd say, great, send over a box to your stationery. You'd send over a huge box that would sit in our warehouse, never get used, take up space, and we would have to deal with that and remember under which desk we'd stick your cards. Now we've actually added a full digital press. So a big portion of our workspace is dedicated to a print shop where we print cards on demand. So if today you ask for 3 cards, tomorrow you ask for 10, we're able to manage that. We've reduced our inventory management and our warehouse space substantially due to that. So there's just a lot of things we've done that, you know, you have to look at your business kind of from the outside in, and don't work on the business, but don't work in the business, but work on the business and see, okay, what are the real bottlenecks here? Is it building robots? Is it dealing with inventory? Whatever those are. And that's been really fun.
I bet it has been. So you asked permission to go back into your previous business and find a couple of mistakes and successes, and so green light it. So
what were you they all have
about?
To do with screwing up.
Okay.
So early on in my last company, it too started as a one-man show, and there weren't too many texting companies around back there. So we got some really great clients like Marie Claire magazine and some pretty big clients early on, including the circus. When the circus existed, Feld Entertainment owned the circus, Ringling Brothers, and Disney on Ice, and Monster Trucks, and all these other brands. And we powered text messaging for all of them. Early on, I was living in Chicago, and I was not only selling the accounts, but making sure everything worked. So the circus had this thing where the elephant would come out and paint a picture during part of the show. And they said, you know, if you texted this word that would appear during the show, you know, as he was painting or whatever, you could win a family 4-pack to Disney on Ice. They were cross-promoting Disney on Ice. You would be entered to win a family 4-pack. So what happened was I programmed the system to accept all the entries, wait a delay, and then pick one person at random and send them a family 4-pack. I then left for a date. I was a single man in Chicago. I left, took my car downtown Chicago, and as I'm getting downtown, my phone rings, and it's the woman from the circus saying, I don't know what happened, but we're having everybody come to the ticket gate saying they've won a family 4-pack to Disney on Ice. So in my haste or excitement of going on this date, I had forgotten to limit it to one person. So I'm driving to the date. I say, well, I guess Cellit, my old company, is buying everybody a family 4-pack to Disney on Ice, which is what we did. We took responsibility. We owned up. We bought we said, we didn't say turn them down. We said, give them the tickets. We covered it. I get to the date and this girl was so cheery. And I told her, and I was all stressed out and clearly not in the best mood. And I said, this is what happened. I just screwed up. I accidentally gave everybody, everybody won. There was supposed to be one winner. And she's like, that's great. It's going to go to Disney on Ice. And I said, yeah, you could think of it that way. But they really appreciated that we owned up and we did the right thing. And so much of, and I'm in my 40s, I'm 45, but I call them these kids today because right now I notice so many people never take responsibility. They never own up to their issues, and they never you have to go above and beyond to fix what you did. For instance, we had at the same company, our client was Elizabeth Arden Red Door Spas. Mm-hmm. And they were doing a promotion where you would text in, again, before the iPhone, or I guess right after the iPhone, text in to join our spa club and get special alerts on your phone about the spa. And we had sent them posters, or they had asked for the number to go on the posters. Then they had posters made up for every store. So, text Red Door to 12345 to get entered in this thing. And the account manager gave them the wrong number. Instead of 12345, they said 54321 or whatever it was. So what we could have done is just said, oh, we're so sorry. Here's a bunch of money to go, replace those posters. Instead, we had the correct posters made up at our cost. I then sent my employees to all Elizabeth Arden locations around the country, carrying the poster and a bag of treats, and dropped them off at each spa and apologized. Because we knew it was our fault. So we wanted to make it right and keep the account. And to me, it really, service is what sets you apart. And it's not that you screw up. Everybody screws up. It's how you handle the screw up. And that was really important to me. So that's probably my favorite example. These days, lessons learned are more about tiptoeing around employees. Dealing with employees is much harder these days. But those are really my best examples that I can share.
So, okay, talking about these days. So what would you say is holding you and the company back right now?
I think managing employees, getting good cultural fits. We're starting to implement some cultural surveys to identify the types of employees that we want around here. All ethnicities, all ages, all genders, all sexual orientations. I don't care about that, but I care about how your mind works and what you feel is important. And so we're implementing some cultural surveys to do that, and try to find better people to put in the right seats. I find people these days, there's a it's not that they don't believe in authority. They just believe they have the authority, that they've been doing this job for 2 weeks. So why should you, who's been doing this job for 20 years, tell me anything? I've been doing this too. There's this flattening. And I think it starts very early with parenting and parents going by first names, and don't get me started. But I think, as opposed to Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, I think there's just a lack of respect and a lack of authority that we really kind of need to nip in the bud. Nobody appreciates experience anymore.
Very well said. So we've got a lot of listeners. We've got potential customers. We've got potential employees for you, software engineers, fabricators, potential vendors. So thinking about all those folks, David, how would they get a hold of you and your organization?
Yeah, the best way, honestly, is just to go to, you can obviously email me. I'm David at Handwrytten, and Handwrytten spelled with a Y, so HANDWRYTTEN.com. That's the best way to get in touch with me. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn. Just look for David Handwrytten, and you'll find me on those. LinkedIn is the big one. I'm less active on Twitter. Please visit handwrytten.com and if you don't believe what we do looks real, request a free sample pack. Just go to the business tab at the top, fill in your info. We'll send you a whole sample kit with all sorts of examples of our handwriting styles and our printing quality and all that, so you can judge for yourself. You can lick your finger and smudge the ink, see that it passes the smudge test. But yeah, that's what I recommend people do. And then if you want to sign up, use discount code podcast when you sign up, all one word, and that'll get you a few bucks of free credit to set up your own account. Beautiful.
Thank you very much. Very generous. So I've asked you quite a bit of questions, dug in a little bit and so forth and so on, but is there a question maybe that you were waiting for me to ask you, David, and I didn't? And so what would that question be, and what would the answer be?
A lot of people ask, how hard is it to get started? And you kind of asked me that when you said, how much is a card? $10. This doesn't have to be, you don't need to use this at all. What I'm really, as you mentioned at the top of your show, you said that the topic is the power of handwritten notes. You don't need to use us. You don't need to use our competitors. You just need to write handwritten notes and see for yourself. So yeah, I would say it's not hard to get started. Send a handwritten note yourself and see the results that it generates. Just yesterday, I have a buddy back from Chicago, in Chicago, barely knew the guy, but he's decided to stay in touch with me. And he wants to use our service to prospect houses. He's looking to buy a house, going through realtors. He's not seeing the inventory these days. He figured, well, let me send out a bunch of handwritten notes in neighborhoods I want, and maybe somebody will appeal, find that a nice appeal and offer their house. He sent, I was joking with him yesterday. I said, perfect, we don't have to go any further. He sent one note. I have it on my phone. I could show you the text message. He sent one note to test it, just to see how this process worked and to see if, what would happen. He sent one note and the person called him. One note so I say, stop right there. You have 100% success rate. No need to go any further. But he used our service to do that, but you don't need to use our service. Just send handwritten notes and take a thank you first approach, a gratitude first approach to your business, and see what a change that makes. The other question people often ask us is, what's the ROI on this? And my answer these days is, if you have to ask for the ROI, you're thinking about it completely wrong. It's people now have unlimited opportunities of alternative products. We live in a world of abundance. And if they don't buy your widget or buy your service, they can choose from any widget or service on the internet. So you need to be thankful that they found you, and don't look for the ROI. That relationship will naturally blossom. So those would be the two things I'd say.
Fantastic. Thank you, David, very much. So everybody, look, in closing, let's focus on a single fact, and that is this. Our businesses do not become extraordinary in a single moment. Instead, they get there as a result of the owner, you and I, first learning and then applying to have the right mindset, a dedication to a system of management, and number three, leveraging high performance teams, either inside your organization or outside people who are very well equipped to help you out, like David right here in front of you right now. So thanks for listening, David. And once again, thanks for being here with us.
Thank you, Bill.